All right, it's 4:01 on the dot. This train's about to depart. Welcome. This is Western's Institute for Energy Studies speaker series. I'm happy to host this week. I'm Professor Charles Barnhart in the Institute for Energy Studies program, and I'm really honored. No, I'm stoked to have Ryan Bottem here with us. He is an alum of Western. He has a bachelor's in environmental sciences and a master's in environmental sciences with a concentration in energy. Is that
It's in the next slide. It's good.
next slide? Okay, great. And he is, despite recently graduating, he's already making significant inroads into the energy policy field here in this state and the region, the broader region, by working for the public generating pool. And they help do energy analysis for public utilities. And he's going to talk today about Northwest Utilities and resource adequacy study. But real briefly, I just want to thank the advisory board for the Institute for Energy Studies and all of you here in the audience and out in cyberspace that support the great program and the students we have here. Thanks again.
Awesome. Clip my mic back on. Awesome. Thank you very much, Charlie. And thank you to Darren McGee, who couldn't be here today, organizer of the speaker series and director of the Institute for Energy Studies. I'm very happy to be here. Like Charlie said, I am an alum of Western Washington University. I got my bachelor's here in energy science and technology, finished in 2023. And then stuck around for a master's in environmental science, studying life cycle assessment. Finished that just in June. So I moved from Western and academia to the Public Generating Pool. It's a trade association representing 9 publicly owned utilities that own or operate their own generating resources. So we've got a map here with some of our members. We can talk a little bit more about those later. Today, we're going to be talking about resource adequacy and a study in which PGP has been involved. I'll start with a bit of introduction, going over some of the fundamentals of resource adequacy, then some background on the study, including the modeling approach, participants, geographic and temporal scope, the study's intentions, and then we're going to get into phase 1 results from our modeling consultants, E3. They've delivered phase 1 results with an overview of key takeaways, assessment of the regional load forecasts, retirements, build-out trends, and then next we'll look at an example of a cold weather event, energy limited event, and some of the modeled effective capacities of a variety of resource types. We'll get into what that means in a bit. Then we'll review load resource balance tables for the Greater Northwest through 2030, illustrating the modeled supply shortfalls, and we'll round this all out with a broader examination of historical build rates and retirement rates, as well as the anticipated generation projects for the future. I'll try to move through this material quickly, but if I lose any of you, feel free to raise your hands at any time. We'll pick you right back up. And I will save some time at the end for questions. So you can hold them if you want. I can't see chat, so Charlie will just stop me if you have a question, pop it in chat. So a brief introduction here. What is resource adequacy? What does it mean? The simplest definition we've been working with recently is up there highlighted, ensuring generation can meet load during the most challenging system conditions. This means knowing the details and trends for lots of different variables, knowing roughly how large your system peaks are going to be, how much energy the system will require over a period of time, and making sure that these balance out within a margin of error. A key piece here is the industry standard. The industry standard for resource adequacy is 1 day of lost load in 10 years. This will be important later and is really kind of the central motivation for studying resource adequacy. We want some degree of confidence that in the future, our system and where our adequacy metrics will fall, we want to know where that's at. We want to know where our resource adequacy metrics are. So that's kind of the central idea for a utility, right? Reliably provide energy to your customers. Something I heard recently, it's not just keeping the lights on, but on Friday, our study communications group had a meeting and someone expanded on that. Aaron Orlowski from Eugene Water and Electric Board, one of our member utilities, expanded on that, and he said it's not just keeping the lights on, it's keeping homes warm when it's cold outside. It's a little more nuanced than just keeping lights on. It's those really critical periods of time where things are really difficult, things can get a little dangerous, right? So keeping homes warm in the winter, not just keeping the lights on. All right, so we're going to jump right into this study. So to clarify, E3, or Energy, Environment, and Economics, not me, I don't work for them. It's a San Francisco-based consulting firm focused primarily on the clean energy transition with a pedigree in climate policy and energy policy. They often work with utilities and others to develop projects like integrated resource plans. They support and help develop California's Air Resource Board. And they've done several studies in large-scale grid or system analyses for resource adequacy assessments. Very similar. This is something they're familiar with. So E3 was retained by a group of regional study partners, including the Public Generating Pool, who I do work for, along with 14 other parties. So to clarify, we at PGP have been closely involved in steering the direction of the work, but all of the analysis has been done by E3. They are contracted analysts. So E3 is doing this study in a two-phased modeling approach. It'll include capacity expansion modeling to provide a robust perspective on the system reliability and cost under aggressive clean energy targets. So E3 is conducting its modeling in two phases. Today, I have phase one. It was wrapped up fairly recently. Phase two will be coming in January. Phase one is exploring the problem, and phase two will be exploring some of the ways we can solve that problem. Okay, so this is the overview slide that gets us right into the depths of the details here. So these are the key takeaways from phase one. I'll pull these cards off the screen as we go through. Where'd my cursor go? There it is. So E3 was retained by this group of regional study partners, including the Public Generating Pool, to evaluate the state of resource adequacy in the Pacific Northwest today and into the future. Key finding number one, accelerated load growth and continued retirements create a resource gap beginning in 2026 and growing to 9 gigawatts of effective capacity by 2030. 9 gigawatts is approximately the load of the state of Oregon. Key finding number two, preferred resources such as wind, solar, and batteries only make small contributions to meeting resource adequacy needs. And key finding number three, timely development of all resources is extremely challenging due to permitting and interconnection delays, federal policy headwinds, and cost pressures. We will go into how they found these key findings now. So phase one of the E3 study looks at the RA picture in the greater Northwest from 2025 through 2030. It includes Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, a little bit of Utah, and Wyoming. That scope is broken down into two transmission-limited subregions, which include Washington and Oregon in the Pacific Northwest, and then the west of Cascades region, including Washington and Oregon, west of the Cascades. Okay, I just covered that. Key inputs. Key inputs were sourced from lots of regional entities, IRPs, and data was collected from industry partners and then standardized to industry practices. So we're talking about IRPs, conversations directly with utilities, Bonneville Power Administration. And the reliability metrics, the outputs from this, we're looking at the magnitudes of any shortfalls and how different resource types specifically contribute to filling shortfalls. So for our projected load forecast, E3 has utilized, we haven't done any load forecasting in-house. This is the load forecast developed by the Pacific Northwest Utilities Conference Committee. They compile IRPs and their respective load forecasts into a single regional load forecast here. And that's what we're utilizing. So we have 50/50 seasonal peak load forecasts in orange and blue. So what that means is this is the seasonal peak load for the entire greater Northwest region, forecasted in multiple iterations here. So we have solid lines representing the absolute latest forecasts that came out this year, for, I believe it was this year or last year, for 2025. And then we have these increasingly dashed to dotted lines that go backwards in time. You can see 2025 solid line, 2024 large dash, all the way back to 2022. So I mentioned the orange and blue are our seasonal peaks, and then we have the system average, or the annual energy average megawatts, in green. What we're getting at here is that the system is increasingly more and more, is growing at an increasing rate, right? So here in the dotted line, we have a growth rate less than 1%. These more recent growth rates are up near 3%, unprecedented in the country. I mean, I believe we've mentioned Arizona and Florida as precedent for 3% growth rates, but it's very unusual for this region. As you can see, it's coming out of nowhere. So the stars here on the far left also represent significant peaks. These are significant weather events where peak demand was driven even higher. And so this growing what's driving this growth in load is the artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and general reliance on data and online data centers, basically, is what I'm trying to say here. Data centers are driving this, as well as general electrification. So home heating transitioning from gas to electric, that's an additional electrical load. Vehicles transitioning from internal combustion engine to electric vehicles, that's going to drive additional load. These are all forecasts. We're using the absolute latest we've got. So we'll move on from that. So since 2018, new resource additions have been slow and located primarily outside of Washington and Oregon. So what we have here is a table, or kind of a chart, showing you on the left-hand side the negatives. These are retirements regionally, and then on the right-hand side, these are new resources. So on the left-hand side, we have the recent coal retirements driven by policy. These were coal plants that have been retired in Washington, Oregon, and the broader region. These requirements have been reduced. These retirements have reduced the quantity of firm capacity available to the region. On the right, we have resource additions. These are primarily wind, solar, and batteries, with the majority of all resources being built well outside the transmission-constrained subregions. So remember that the west of Cascades and the Pacific Northwest are transmission-constrained. So while it is great to see new resources being built in Wyoming and Utah, and they are considered in the greater Northwest, we just do need to consider that we have separate subregions up top, right? And just as an added reminder, these are nameplate capacities and don't reflect the capacity factors of these variable resources like wind and solar batteries. And the last point here, the gray bar on the Idaho, Utah, Wyoming slot there, that gray bar represents new natural gas or new gas, but that is actually a conversion from the same retirement you see to the left of the gray bar. They've converted from coal to natural gas. So that doesn't represent any actual new capacity, just a change of fuel. Okay, so in our region, the most constrained reliability conditions are multi-day wintertime cold weather events. So multi-day meaning close to a week, perhaps. Cold weather events, we're talking about January, February, December, perhaps. And critically during years of low hydro conditions. So a drought, maybe not necessarily a drought, but low hydro conditions. So we're a region built on hydroelectricity. We're reliant on it. 60 to 70% of our energy comes from there. The role it plays in the study is critical. Variations in water levels are variations in stored energy. It's a big energy storage system. So when E3 modeled the greater Northwest, shortfall events primarily occurred in the winter. And this heat map shows specifically when. We have very strong representation from December. Those are lots of lost load hours throughout December, and then kind of tapers off in January, but comes back full force in February, often one of our coldest months with the peakiest of loads. A sudden snowstorm can just drive load through the roof. Now here we have the events, all the simulated events for 2,500 years, tuned to a 1 in 10 or 1 day in 10 year standard, right? So we're sticking with the standard. This system is compliant with that. But they ran this model over 2,500 years and found a significant number of shortfalls, and not only a significant number of shortfalls, but shortfalls that exceeded 1 day. So on the left, we have a scatter plot from the model with the 24-hour threshold, the orange dashed line, and then on the right, a histogram showing the distribution of those events, many of them exceeding 100 hours. Long duration reliability shortfalls have to be met with long duration resources that can deliver in cold winter conditions. So E3 has modeled a variety of resources. Here we're looking at their effective capacity as a percentage of nameplate capacity. Effective capacity being how effective it is at delivering to load, specifically during these critical conditions, right? This is not average conditions. These are during low hydro, extremely cold events. So resources that are commercially available today include wind, solar, short duration storage, demand response, and natural gas. We're assessing these resources during a cold snap coinciding with a low hydro year. And wind and solar do deliver valuable energy to load, but so you can see they're not zero, but it's not available when needed most. Solar, I heard an anecdote. I'm just going off script here for a second. I heard an anecdote from the general manager from OCEC, a co-op out in Winthrop, and they're situated in a valley. They're up in the mountains. It's extremely cold there. Solar isn't useful in the valley in those conditions. It's very cold in the morning. You turn your thermostat on, mountains in the way. Solar doesn't do anything. So that's the kind of thinking we need to apply to this, right? When are these resources available, and are they effectively meeting load when it's needed the most? Okay, so to address batteries, they return low values because we can't charge them without surplus energy. They work best as a load shifting tool, moving energy from renewables around the clock. But for the most part, those renewables are needed when available during these cold snap events. They're needed. It's not going to the batteries. It's going straight to load. So the batteries don't get a chance to charge. Many innovative, clean, and firm technologies are in development, but none are yet ready for large-scale deployment in the near term. So this is an example of one of these coincident events. E3 used the current grid, so variables like population and generation resources, and they paired that with the weather conditions seen in February of 2014 and the drought conditions from 1993. So 2 instances that did occur, not at the same time, but we're modeling that as if they did. The impacts on the hydro are also felt by those drought conditions from 1993. That's the primary reason included. So they simulated an energy limited event for the entire greater Northwest region. We can see the baseload thermal resources, hydro peaking where loads increase, wind, solar, they're in the mix as well when available. And then critically here, red at the top, that is unserved load. It's a little difficult to see, but there is a black line at the very top. So the gap between that black line of load and the resources beneath, that's filled in red. So I'll point out the batteries. As I was saying earlier, a little redundant here, but you can see that the batteries were charged at the beginning of this cold snap event. But once they were spent, they weren't recharged again for several days. Let's see, can I move my, yes, I can. Okay, cursor. Right here, you can see the resources do exceed load for a brief moment, and they recharge the batteries. There's a bit of purple there as well. So that's the situation with batteries. With the unserved load, there's no excess energy to fill them. And the simulated event represents a total reliability risk of 162 hours over this period of time that's plotted up here, with gaps as large as 2,000 megawatts. So the Greater Northwest faces a supply shortfall in 2026, which starting in 2026 will then grow to 8,700 megawatts by 2030. This table shows the modeled effective capacity contributions from the existing portfolio and from in-development firm resources, as well as firm imports. Load growth and retirements mean the region faces a power supply shortfall in 2026. The region relies on 2,500 megawatts of imports to maintain reliability. Then, nearly 9,000 megawatts of effective capacity is needed by 2030. As load grows and resources are built, they outpace one another. Projects currently in active development account for only 3,000 megawatts of new effective capacity. That's the outpacing I'm talking about. So 850 are coal to gas conversions, and 260 megawatts are from hydro upgrades. So the rate of new resource additions required to meet resource adequacy needs in the next 5 years is unprecedented. It's kind of the key idea of this slide. We have on the left the previous 25 years of resource additions and retirements, with the upcoming 5 years of IRP planned additions on the right in that blue box. I think we can all see the drastic change in development needed to solve this problem. We aren't saying it's going to be impossible to meet this level of growth, but it does require 4 to 5 times the historical resource development rates. And project development is currently experiencing significant headwinds, as mentioned earlier, due to changes in federal policy and higher costs. We've already seen this slide, but this time I've highlighted the gap in effective capacity. Just a reminder, what we're facing is 9 gigawatts of effective capacity by 2030, a load approximately the size of Oregon. So what does this all mean? So one, beginning in 2026, the Pacific Northwest faces an elevated risk of power supply shortfalls, which could lead to rolling blackouts during winter cold snaps. 2, shortfalls are most severe during winter cold snaps when solar and wind output are low, especially if they occur during low water conditions that limit hydropower production. 3, this is due to the retirement of firm on-demand legacy resources, a lag in building enough replacements, and accelerated demand growth in energy demand specifically. Finally, there's an immediate need to take action to maintain reliability during the transition to a cleaner energy future. And we are thinking of solutions. Like I said earlier, this is phase 2. There's lots of cause for concern, but we're looking for solutions. Phase 2 of the E3 study will shed more light on the recommendations. It's in development and is expected to be completed early next year, January. Looking ahead at phase 2, analysis will evaluate the resource adequacy contributions and trade-offs associated with a balanced portfolio. The solutions may include near-term emergency measures, demand response programs, development of preferred resources like wind and solar, development of emerging technologies, transmission development, regional coordination, and conventional generation as a bridge resource. So an all of the above approach.